please contact city.clerk@mountainview.gov to obtain a copy of the applicable resolution. All members of the City Council are participating in this meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. Members of the public wishing to observe the meeting live may do so at mountainview.legistar.com, youtube.com/mountainviewgov, and on Comcast Channel 26. Noted on the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral public comments during the public comment period by visiting mountainview.gov/meeting to enter the Zoom meeting, or by phone by dialing 669-900-9128 and entering webinar ID 843-5126-7142. Any emails received by 4:30 p.m. today were received directly by the City Council. City Attorney Logue will make a closed session announcement, and then the City Council welcomes public comment on the items listed for closed session.
Thank you and good evening. There are two items on the closed session agenda for this evening. Item 2.1 is a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property at issue is 538 Thompson Avenue. The agency negotiators are Real Property Program Administrator Angela LaMonica and Public Works Director Don Cameron. The negotiating party is Patricia K. Ecker, trustee of the Ecker Survivors Trust, and under negotiation are price and terms of purchase. Item 2.2 is a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is 544 Thompson Avenue. The agency negotiators are Real Property Program Administrator Angela LaMonica and Public Works Director Don Cameron. The negotiating party is the Pizzini Family Trust, and under negotiation are price and terms of purchase.
Thank you. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on the closed session items listed on tonight's agenda? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. Seeing no members of the public wishing to speak, the council will now recess to close session and return to this webinar at 6:30 p.m. for the regular session. See you then. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Mountain View City Council of October 25th, 2022. I will now read the usual announcement as required. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with California Government Code Section 54953E as authorized by resolution of the City Council. Please contact city.clerk@mountainview.gov to obtain a copy of the applicable resolution. All members of the City Council are participating in this meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. Members of the public wishing to observe the meeting live may do so at mountainview.legistar.com, youtube.com/mountainviewgov, and on Comcast Channel 26. As noted on the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral public comments during the public comment period by visiting mountainview.gov/meeting to enter the Zoom webinar, or by phone by dialing 669-900-9128 and entering webinar ID 843-5126-7142. Any emails received by 4:30 p.m. today were received directly by the City Council. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The City Clerk will take attendance by roll call.
Councilmember Kamei?
Here.
Councilmember Liebert?
Here.
Councilmember Matichak?
Here.
Councilmember Showalter?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hicks?
Here.
Mayor Ramirez?
Here.
You have a quorum with Councilmember Abikoba absent.
Thank you. We'll now move on to presentations. Please note these are presentations only. The City Council will not take any action. Public comment will occur after the presentation items. And the first will be 3.1, National Arts and Humanities Month Proclamation. Can someone help me find Teresa to promote to the panel? Fantastic, thank you. We are happy to be joined this evening by Teresa Yvonne, Performing Arts Manager, to accept this proclamation. Proclamation reads, whereas the nation's 120,000 nonprofit arts organizations, the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the nation's 4,500 local arts agencies in communities across the country, and the Arts and Humanities Councils of the 50 states and the 6 U.S. jurisdictions and districts have regularly issued official proclamations on an annual basis designating October as National Arts and Humanities Month, and whereas cities and states, through their local, city, and state arts agencies, which represent thousands of cultural organizations, have celebrated the value and importance of culture in the lives of Americans and the health of thriving communities during National Arts and Humanities Month for nearly 30 years, and whereas the humanities help diverse communities across the United States explore their history and culture with the support and partnership of the National Endowment for the Humanities, the 50 state and 6 jurisdictions and district humanities councils, and local educational and cultural institutions. And whereas the arts and humanities embody so much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, and whereas the arts and humanities enhance and enrich the lives of everyone in America, and whereas the arts and humanities play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, and our country, and whereas despite significant losses during the coronavirus pandemic, the creative industries remain among the most vital sectors of the American economy, providing new opportunities for developing cities, creating jobs and economic activity within their own industry and across sectors, and making communities attractive to business development. And whereas the nation's arts and culture sector, nonprofit commercial education, is an $877 billion industry that supports 4.6 million jobs, representing 4.2% of the nation's economy, a larger share of GDP than powerhouse sectors such as agriculture, transportation, and utilities, and boasts a $33 billion international trade surplus. And whereas the nonprofit arts industry alone generates $27.5 billion in government revenue and $166.3 billion in economic activity annually by organizations and audiences, including spending by attendees to arts events of $31.47 per person per event, beyond the cost of admission on items such as meals, parking, and lodging, making the arts a vital income source for local businesses. Now, therefore, I, Lucas Ramirez, Mayor of the City of Mountain View, along with my colleagues on the City Council, do hereby proclaim October as National Arts and Humanities Month in Mountain View and call upon our community members to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in our city and to specifically encourage greater participation by said community members in taking action for the arts and humanities in the City of Mountain View. Teresa, would you like to say a few words?
I would. Thank you so much, Mayor and Council. We appreciate, on behalf of the Performing Arts Committee, we appreciate this proclamation very much. We are committed to ensuring that the arts are accessible to all, and we look forward to celebrating our artists and our creative community here in Mountain View this month and for us all year long. So thank you very much.
Thank you for accepting the proclamation. Would any member of the council like to share a few words? Vice Mayor Hicks.
I just wanted to thank you as well for the really important work that you do that I think often goes under-recognized as important. You know, it's the work that brings joy to our lives and meaning to our lives. And I guess I'll just say it again, it's often under-recognized as such. But I will say, I think our council does recognize it to some degree because we upped our public arts budget, and we've been redoing our strategic plan for visual arts. And I'm looking forward to what your committee does as well. So thank you again.
Thank you. Any other remarks? If not, thank you very much again for joining us this evening. And we will proceed now to 3.2, Domestic Violence Awareness Month Proclamation. And I will, here we go. We are already joined by Shabana. We are happy to be joined this evening by Shabana Ansari, Legal Advocacy Coordinator for Matrice, to accept this proclamation. Proclamation reads, whereas, although progress has been made toward preventing and ending domestic violence and providing support to survivors and their families, important work remains to be done. And whereas domestic violence programs in California provide essential life-saving services for survivors, their children, and communities. And whereas there is a need to provide education, awareness, and understanding of domestic violence and its causes. And whereas there were 87 domestic violence-related homicides in California in 2020, of which 70 of the fatalities were female and 17 were male, and 7% of all homicides in 2020 were domestic violence related. And whereas all survivors deserve access to culturally responsive programs and services to increase their safety and self-sufficiency, and whereas all communities deserve access to culturally responsive prevention programs and initiatives to improve overall community health and safety by challenging the societal norms that perpetuate violence, and whereas domestic violence affects people of all genders, sexual orientations, ages, racial, ethnic, cultural, social, religious, and economic groups in the United States and here in California. Now, therefore, I, Lucas Ramirez, Mayor of the City of Mountain View, along with my colleagues on the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Shabana, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council members, and members of the public. I'm Shabana Ansari and part of Mountain View City since 2016. Today, I stand here as an advocate for victims and survivors of domestic violence. I represent Maitri, an organization devoted to serving victims and survivors of domestic violence since 1991, and want to take a few moments to talk about an epidemic that is pervasive in our homes, cities, state, country, and all over the world. Domestic violence exists in all communities, irrespective of culture, religion, sexual orientation, financial status, and immigration realities. Research shows that nearly 20 people per minute are abused by an intimate partner in the United States. The presence of a gun increases the risk of homicide by 500% in a situation involving domestic violence. There have been more poignant time for prevention-focused activities. State-based responses, community-based organizations, and members of the community in general, we all have our parts to play. The need for a comprehensive plan to address domestic violence in our communities is urgent, and we thank the City of Mountain View for providing much needed assistance in many areas, and we also request you to help step up the effort. I request the City Council to consider the following: enact and support policies that address an intersectional approach to addressing domestic violence, homelessness, pay equity, reproductive rights, poverty reduction, to name a few. Support funding for domestic violence service providers at the federal, state, county, and city levels. Rethink law enforcement responses to crisis situations with a special focus on trainings on domestic violence and stopping brutality against people of color. Evaluate and improve language access at city facilities. Offer trainings on cultural responsiveness to various local government employees and agencies. Involve non-governmental organizations as thought partners while planning city activities. Uplift the voices of the minority groups whenever possible, as they lack representation in committees and other policy-making spaces. To the community members, I urge you to recognize domestic violence as a pressing issue. Exemplify healthy relationship for the children at home, elect leaders, and promote policies that contribute towards building a just and equitable future for all of us. Thank you for adopting this proclamation and commemorating October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Thank you, Shabana, for joining us this evening. Are there any comments from members of the council? If not, Vice Mayor Hicks.
Well, I don't want to be I don't want to take over all the talk space here, but I thought I would comment on this one as well. I just want to thank you so much for coming. I think this is one of the things that many of us on council probably think about, but we have not made it an agenda item of any type. And I was glad that you brought up the intersection of several problems, because the one that comes to mind for me is, although you named many good ones, is the fact that housing here is so unaffordable that I think it makes it hard often, or extra hard, for people who are maybe in abusive situations but feel that they have nowhere to move to. So that's the intersection of two problems that came to my mind, and it may be one of the things council talk about in the future. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other remarks from the council? If not, thank you again for joining us. And we will now take public comment for both presentation items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on the presentation items listed on the agenda? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. I am not seeing any member of the public wishing to speak on the presentation items, so we will move on to the next item, the consent calendar. These items will be approved by one motion unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. Would any member of the council like to pull an item? Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to abstain on item 4.1, and I'd like to pull item 4.9.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. I just have questions about 4.7 and 4.9. So I'm not sure I really want to pull them for a separate vote, but I want to have a couple questions answered before I vote. Thank you.
No problem. So 4.9 has been pulled. If you have a question on 4.7, let's go ahead and take it after public comment, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. And then we'll just wrap it in with the motion. Any other members of the council wishing to pull an item? Okay, so we will take 4.9 separately. So I'll take public comment for 4.9 at that time as well. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on any item on the consent calendar except for 4.9, which is El Camino Real pedestrian and bicycle improvements, heritage tree removal and mitigation? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone, and a timer will be displayed on the screen. I am not seeing members of the public wishing to provide comment on the consent calendar, so we will return to the council for a motion, and I'll note that here we go. The motion should include the reading of the title of the ordinance attached to 4.1 and the resolutions attached to 4.2, 4.3, and 4.6. And Councilmember Matichak, let's go ahead to you first for questions on 4.7.
Thank you. I'd just like to have it clarified the action on this one that should occur in 5 years. Is it that automatically the left-hand turn lanes are built, or is it that it returns to council for a decision on whether or not we should build the extra left-hand turn lanes?
Good
Something
evening.
else. Sorry.
Good evening. This is Dawn Cameron, Public Works Director. I guess I was unmuted, so I'll just go ahead and answer the question here. We would need to return to council for approval to do the left-hand turn lanes. First off, we would need to create a CIP and have a budget to do so. So that's an obvious decision point that the council would need to make at that time in order to pursue them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, a motion is in order for the balance of the consent calendar. And then noting the abstention on 4.1 from Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Showalter.
Okay, I see that there are some things I need to read. I would like to move the consent calendar. Item 4.1, adopt an ordinance of the City of Mountain View amending Chapter 27 of the Mountain View City Code to add Article 4, establishing pedestrian malls on Castro Street between the east leg of West Evelyn Avenue and Villa Street and West Dana Street, and California Street. In the City of Mountain View, to be read in title only, further reading waived. Item 4.2, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View adopting Council Policy K27, recognition of individuals, organizations, and/or events, to be read in title only, further reading waived. Item 4.3, adopt a resolution of intention of the City of Mountain View to vacate street right-of-way and public easements within the Middlefield Park Master Plan on a 40-acre site located at the northeast corner of Ellis Street and East Middlefield Road and north of Maud Avenue between Logue and Clyde Avenue, to be read in title only, further reading waived, and set a date for a public hearing to consider the vacation for November 15th, 2022. Item 4.6, adopt a resolution of the City of Mountain View authorizing a City Council of the City of Mountain View authorizing application of the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program, approving a 5-year plan for the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program formula allocation of an estimated $1,539,306 and certifying to the Department of Housing and Community Development compliance with the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program requirements, to be read in title only, further reading waived.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hicks.
So I second.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? And if not, I'll ask the city clerk to start the roll call.
Councilmember Showalter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hicks,
Yes.
Councilmember Kamei,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
I with an abstention on 4.1.
Councilmember Matichak,
Yes.
Mayor Ramirez.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Fantastic, thank you. So we'll now move to item 4.9, the El Camino Real pedestrian and bicycle improvements. Let's take comment or questions, and then I'll go to the public for public comment, and then we'll return for action. Are there any questions on 4.9? Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. Given that the heritage trees that are proposed to be removed have a major link to Mountain View history and are a significant natural feature of Mountain View, I'm wondering what other options there are that are out there to save the trees.
Good evening. This is Dawn Cameron again, Public Works Director. So in terms of other options that were explored, we did look at the possibility of transplanting the trees, but working with the arborists, as noted in the council report, that was not deemed feasible for many reasons, including the size of the trees and the lack of an area potentially to plant them in, and therefore that was not recommended. I understand that another question that's come up was, is there a way to route the bike lane behind the trees and basically make these trees into an island? That also would not be feasible, especially as part of the Caltrans project coming up. To install the bike lane behind the trees and maintain a minimum 5-foot sidewalk will not fit within existing right-of-way. The current right-of-way ends behind the sidewalk. There isn't a lot of extra land that either the state or the city has along El Camino Real. So in order to do so, the city would have to acquire a fairly substantial amount of right-of-way all along the adjacent property frontage, which could be costly and will definitely take more time than Caltrans has in order to pursue their project. So therefore, if the trees are not removed and the curb realigned, what will happen is this segment of El Camino has enough room in it generally for a protected bikeway, but not past these trees. And therefore, it would have to be redesigned past these trees to just provide a 5-foot bike lane. So discontinue the protected bikeway and provide a 5-foot bike lane, which places the bicyclist much closer to the moving traffic.
Thank you. Councilmember Lieber, did you have any other questions?
I just have comments at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Showalter.
Yeah, I just wanted to have repeated for the sake of the public. We did also consider the possibility of using the wood from the trees, but there are problems with that. So Public Works Director, could you explain to us why this particular kind of tree isn't a good candidate for using, the wood for building park furniture or something memorable with them?
Yes, thank you for the question. I just need to go and find my notes because we did look into it at your request. So basically, palm tree wood is not very strong and loses its structural integrity quickly. So in general, palm trees are not suitable for park features or other uses. Generally, they also are not considered usable for lumber purposes.
Okay, thanks for checking into that for us.
Thank you. Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. So back to the question of the bike lane itself. If you only had 5 feet, if the trees remain, if the trees are removed, how wide is the bike lane? Or how wide is the rest of the bike lane?
If the trees are removed, we will put in a protected bikeway, which is 8 feet wide. This will include a 5-foot area for the bike travelway plus a 3-foot buffer area, which will also include a vertical element to separate the bike from the traffic.
Okay, Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Hicks.
So is it possible to put in a thin, like it's a very small stretch of the El Camino Real that we're changing, and I'm wondering if there's a way to put in a thinner protection, you know, like a 6-inch protection or a fence or something for that span. It seems like I've seen that in other places. Is that something that would be a possibility? Because then you'd have a bike lane that's virtually the same as width as everywhere else.
Unfortunately, no. First off, this is a Caltrans facility and we must meet their standards, and they're not going to approve trying to put something, really, there's only room for 5 feet, and then your 6-inch bike lane stripe that you typically have between a bike lane and the travel lane. And we're already narrowing travel lanes on El Camino to make some of this room available. So it would not pass Caltrans standards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any remaining questions? If not, then we'll turn to the public. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on consent calendar item 4.9? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. See a couple of hands up. Let's go ahead and allocate 2 minutes. The first speaker is Bruce England.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just one brief comment on this item. Probably falls more into questions for council members, but anyway, something to consider. That putting the additional trees in the median, just to ensure that there's adequate irrigation services to support the new trees. We know that sometimes plants in the median spaces don't do really well. So I didn't see that consideration in the staff report. So wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alex Brown.
Hey, there's no excuse to keep a palm tree in this region. They're not native. They're ugly. They're grasses. No, palm trees are not. Oh God. Oh, I love a good tree. These palms are not it. I can't stand them. Especially the date palms. They drop a bunch of inedible nonsense. The fronds get everywhere. I don't like them. Anyway, hi. How's it going? That's it. I don't like palm trees.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other members of the public wishing to speak, we will return to the council for deliberation and action. Any member of the council like to begin? Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm not going to be making a motion to remove the trees. In fact, these 2 trees are the last existing remnant of our original downtown at El Camino and Grant Road. And I think that it's really easy to erase the past and much more difficult to keep it. But I think that these 2 trees are large, healthy survivors from our past. And I think that if we had the will, there is a way to either narrow the road or narrow the bikeway, to ask about purchasing property from the funeral home, or to look into some other ways of dealing with this. I think that just simply saying that we're going to let all the pieces of our past go and never have the opportunity to connect with them. And our trees that are bona fide old trees are important to the community. And given that they mark the location of the ranch house of the owners of the hotel that existed as a stagecoach stop in Mountain View, I think is a significant part of our history. And I wish that we were doing more to keep them. I understand the difficulties of transplantation, and the comment was made in the staff report that these trees are so large and by extension so healthy that it would be difficult to move them to another location. We are in the future going to be putting in other parks that will be in proximity to these trees. And I just think it's to me, to my mind, I don't like the idea of tearing down every single thing about our past in Mountain View. You know, if you go by the intersection of El Camino and Grant Road, there is a marker about the location of the hotel. But it's a significant part of our past that we were oriented around our downtown there at that intersection until the railroad came through, and we forged a new downtown situated around the railroad. And these are the last two survivors standing of that. So I will not be voting for any motion to cut down these two elders, as it were. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Showalter.
Well, I too appreciate the history that they represent, but I didn't know anything about it until somebody sent us all an email today. It's not as if these trees are sort of part of the lore that most of us in Mountain View know about, which is really unfortunate. I think that we should know about this. So what I'd like to have us think about is what could we do to encourage the understanding of the history of this, perhaps by putting a display there or in a park nearby, or some other way. But at the same time, El Camino is in terrible shape, and we really need to get it resurfaced. And this is part of that project. And then the other thing that I think is even more important than that is the bicycle safety. This El Camino is planned to be a major bicycle route up and down the peninsula. We want lots of people to use it, and we want them to feel very, very safe about using it, and having a physical barrier between the place where people bike and the cars is just so vitally important to that. It will really make a difference in getting people out of their cars and helping for us meet our greenhouse gas obligations. So while I'm very sad about losing the trees, I'm really excited about having a safe bike lane that's protected on El Camino. I think that's going to be a wonderful amenity for our community. So based on that, I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Kameh.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Just as a quick comment, one of the challenges with last minute changes is this far down the road, we risk losing our ability to implement the streetscape plan. I think Caltrans is going to continue with the pavement maintenance, whether or not we have a plan in place to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety. And if we make too many significant changes at the last minute, then we might not be able to align implementation in time with the repaving project, and that would be a challenge for the council if one of our priorities continues to be improving bicycle and pedestrian safety. So I agree with Councilmember Showalter. It would be nice to preserve the trees, but I'm not sure there's a feasible way to do it without losing out on the broader opportunities to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety on El Camino. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, I'll ask the city clerk to start the roll call.
Councilmember Showalter,
Yes.
Councilmember Kamei,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
No.
Councilmember Matichak,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hicks,
No.
Mayor Ramirez.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-2.
Thank you. So that is the last item on the consent calendar. We will now move to item 5, oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the council from acting on non-agenda items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. The first speaker will be Supervisor Simidian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and council members. I will adhere strictly to your 3-minute limit. It won't take me that long to tell you that I joined you this evening because I wanted to offer a belated thank you to all of you, to your city staff, and in fact, to the entire city of Mountain View. We have been in this pandemic, I'm afraid, so long that we sometimes forget just how hard people work to help all of us make our way through this time as safely as we possibly could. And one of the organizations, one of the institutions that really did extraordinary work was the city of Mountain View. And it was as simple but as important as making the community center available for the better part of a year and a half as a vaccination site for our local residents. I have made the case for quite some time that if we make it easy, simple, straightforward for folks to take care of themselves and their families, they will do it. In our case here in the North County, that meant having a vaccine site, a booster site that was readily available and close by. And that was made possible for the better part of a year and a half by the city of Mountain View, because you said, you know what, our community center has other good uses and purposes, but the priority has to be keeping us all safe and well. So I want to thank you for that. I know it was a sacrifice for the city. We should report that more than 140,000 vaccinations were administered in that location, typically more than 2,000 a week. At some point, of course, the city said, hey, it's time for our community center to be a community center again. I'm glad that was possible. We now have a county vaccination center site at 435 San Antonio Road, still in Mountain View. For those who know their geography, you will know that is the former home of Joanne Fabric and right next door to Showplace Icon movie theaters. So easy to access, easy to get to, plenty of parking. I hope that folks will avail themselves of that site if they can't find another venue. But mostly I just came to say belatedly, thank you, thank you, and thank you. The city really stepped up, made a sacrifice in terms of offering up its facilities, and we are a safer place and a healthier place as a result. That's what I have. Thank you so much, and I'll let you go back to the rest of your meeting now, having stayed within that 3-minute time limit, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Supervisor, and it truly has been one of the most successful partnerships I think we've had during the pandemic. I am not seeing any other members of the public wishing to speak, so we will conclude item 5 and move to 6.1, mixed-use development at 334 San Antonio Road. Would any council members like to make disclosures? Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. So I would like to disclose that I met with the applicant and I visited the site on my own as well as with the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kamei.
Thank you. I visited the site and I met with the applicant. Thanks.
Vice Mayor Hicks.
Yes, I also met with the applicant and visited the site.
Thank you. Councilmember Showalter.
Same for me. I met with the applicant and visited the site.
Thank you. Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. I had several phone calls from the applicant, but was not able to connect with them, and did visit the site on my own, and also had several communications from interested community members.
Thank you. I also will disclose that I had a conversation by phone with the applicant. I'm actually surprised I'm able to participate because I don't live that far away, but the FPPC sent some advice saying I can, so here I am. We are joined now by Deputy City Administrator Rebecca Shapiro and Assistant City Manager and Community Development Director Artish Srivastava, who will present the item whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Mayor Ramirez and council members. Just give me just one moment to share my screen. So good evening. The item before you tonight is a public hearing to consider a mixed-use residential development at 334 San Antonio Road. This is in the mixed-use corridor sub-area of the San Antonio Precise Plan. The project site is on the southwest corner of San Antonio Road and California Street, where immediately adjacent development includes a bank to the south, a restaurant to the west, additional commercial buildings across California Street to the north, and across San Antonio Road, other new or proposed developments, including the Gray Star mixed-use residential project and the Village at San Antonio developments in San Antonio Center. This project would replace the existing Valero service station with 62 residential units and 1 commercial unit in a 5-story building above 2 levels of underground parking. This is an SB 330 project and also includes a state density bonus request to allow the project to exceed the maximum 1.85 FAR and 4-story height limit ordinarily allowed under the San Antonio Precise Plan. The application also includes a provisional use permit and FAR exemption requests pursuant to provisions of the Precise Plan. And with these proposed permits and the state density bonus concessions proposed by the applicant, the project is considered Precise Plan and general plan compliant for the purposes of project approval tonight. The proposed development would transform the gas station site with more pedestrian-oriented uses and design. Off-site and along the project frontage, the project will construct required street improvements, which include wider detached sidewalks, widening of the vehicle and bike lanes along California Street, bike parking for guests and visitors, and a small public corner plaza, as well as covered arcade featuring landscaping, seating, and art. These improvements and other improvements will require the removal of 3 existing street trees, which are shown in red dashed circles on the screen now. And those tree removals would be replaced by 9 new street trees. The project would also replace 4 existing gas station driveways with a single driveway leading to the underground parking garage, which is accessible from California Street. On site, the proposed building will wrap around a small ground level residential courtyard, which is oriented towards the lower volume California Street frontage. The main pedestrian residential building entry is accessed through this courtyard, while the commercial unit faces and would have direct pedestrian access from San Antonio Road. The majority of the on-site landscaping is in ground level planters or on planters located on the roof deck, and the applicant has begun incorporating a large number of California native and drought tolerant plants to meet our city objectives, reflected in our project conditions of approval for 75% native plants. The building design also seeks to create some visual interest in the commercial storefront in particular, which features zigzag glazing pattern, textured and angular materials, as well as some brighter pops of color. The residential portions of the building are a little bit more staid and have a quieter appearance, using a mix of warm-toned wood panels and siding and stucco to complement other residential design in the area. There are 2 towers with angular roof forms and differentiated siding pattern, which are intended to provide a special treatment at this gateway corner location. Staff has reviewed this design with the Development Review Committee and is recommending approval with minor design conditions to refine a few key character elements of the building. The project before council tonight includes 2 applicant proposed BMR options, which staff is referring to as the original project proposal and BMR option 2. The 2 BMR options are summarized principally within the red dash portion of the table on the screen. On the left-hand side of the table, we're showing how the project addresses state density bonus requirements. And on the right side, the table identifies city BMR ordinance requirements and how the proposed BMR options compare to our local standards. Both of the BMR options include at least 10 low-income affordable units, which qualify the project for the requested 50% state density bonus. The project also, in both options, includes more than the minimum 7 affordable units that would be required by the city's 15% BMR inclusionary standard. The 2 options take different approaches to the BMR unit mix, location, and affordability levels. And the applicant has proposed 3 concessions under state density bonus law to allow deviations from our local requirements for those items. The BMR options, both of them, are discussed in more detail within the staff report. As noted earlier, staff reviewed the project with the DRC on 2 occasions for this project and is recommending conditional approval of the project design. The applicant has also held a neighborhood meeting in November of last year to provide an additional opportunity for public comment on the project, which was largely supportive. Last month, the EPC reviewed the project, including aspects of the applicant's BMR option 2. Complete BMR option 2 information was not available at the time, as the proposal came to EPC shortly before its meeting, but EPC did recommend conditional approval of the project with a preference for BMR option 2. Based on this initial EPC recommendation and more detailed staff analysis since the meeting, staff is also recommending BMR option 2 be approved by council tonight. The overall project recommendation is shown on the screen now and encompasses staff's recommendations for council action on the CEQA, the 5-story 50% state density bonus project proposal, and the condominium subdivision that accompanies the project. This concludes staff's presentation. City staff and our CEQA consultant team are available for any questions that the council may have, and the applicant team is also here tonight and has a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. We will now have a presentation from the applicants, Mircea Voskerichian, and property owner and project applicant Brent Randall, from SDG Architects, Jeff Potts, also from SDG Architects, and Kevin Proctor, Environmental Foresight Incorporated. Someone, if staff can help me elevate them to the panel.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Mircea Voskerichian, and thank you so much for allowing us to present our projects tonight. I wanted to start that I am the applicant and also like co-owner of 334 San Antonio, and our project name is Maverick. I would like first to start to acknowledge Rebecca Shapiro and the entire city staff for supporting us for the last almost 18 months since we started this project, through a lot of due diligence and a lot of feedback and comments to get where we are tonight. I also wanted to point out that this project transforms a pass-through gas station to an attractive destination. It's an all-electric multifamily development that strengthens the neighborhood retail along the San Antonio Road and offering a 62-unit condominium development for future residents in Mountain View to be able to own a condominium. It's a little bit different than we've seen a lot of apartments, and we are very excited about this project. I wanted to also point out that for tonight, as Rebecca Shapiro mentioned, we respectfully ask City Council to review, consider, and approve the 5-story building as a fully compliant option. And two, as part two, as you already received a letter from the applicant in regards to a modified 7-story, 90 units with 14 BMR building to be discussed, and for the City Council to consider to send the applicant back and modify this building appropriately and come back to the City Council in the next 90 to 120 days with a building that could be considered, and that's due of the economical concerns that we presented in our letter. With that, I would like to pass it to our SDG architects team, which will be followed by our landscape architect that is on standby to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mircea. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, that we can be before you to present this 4-cell multifamily development called the Maverick. As Rebecca already noted, there's been quite a development and plans for development around the project site. You can see the project site highlighted in yellow. Recently, the Dean was built, large apartment complex on the same street. Across the street is 391 San Antonio office building, and there will be a new 365 office building at the corner. And then recently completed is the Lansby apartment complex across the street from San Antonio. This really is an exciting chance to transform this gas station into a destination attractive living place for people. A 5-story, 62-unit condominium project. This is California and San Antonio with 2,000 square feet of retail along the edge of San Antonio. It's hard to see, but you can see down below here that you can see the zigzagged glazing for the storefront, which we'll show in more detail. Just a brisk walk through the design features of the building in a more diagrammatic sense. We have here at the corner of California and San Antonio a gateway intersection public plaza that embraces people to come into the project, leading them directly into the retail. We have a gateway tower with a distinctive paneling on it to really hold the corner strong and announce entry into the San Antonio area, complemented by a secondary courtyard tower that really frames this residential courtyard down low and then rises up to a residential roof terrace up above. There's a lot of details at play in this area. We really sought to enrich the pedestrian experience, and we'll have some images of what that looks like in the later part. In terms of the BMR options for this project, there are two as presented by Rebecca. The first one was 13 BMR units at 2 income levels, and the second option was 1 income level, low BMR. It's fully compliant and recommended by the EPC. So again, you can see how this tower holds the corner as you come in on San Antonio. And yet this residential courtyard calls you, kind of calls you in and speaks to the street, saying there's more to this complex, come on in. And then you can see here that zigzag glazing that happens at the retail down here. And then the project is surrounded by public parking for bicyclists. Coming the opposite direction on San Antonio, the design team really paid attention to details to make sure that this building looked good from all different directions and rewarded everyone as they passed by the building, whichever direction. So you can see here we have some exciting paneling that visually attracts people to the retail. And the zigzag glazing here provides different reflections depending on which way you're driving. Then also throughout the building, we have white frames that help modulate and provide a steady rhythm around the building, giving it a pleasing appearance. On the California street side, you can see how, again, we have a strong pedestrian experience. A lot of care was taken to think through every part of this. One of the things we did was to put the garage entry as far away from the intersection as possible to make it as safe as possible. And then this gateway here serves as a direct entry into the bike storage for the residents in the complex. So it makes it very bike friendly for people to get out and experience the city. Then again, this is on the southwest corner of the building. You can really see how the regular rhythm of the white frames really provides a great look to the building. And also the building has a strong top, middle, and bottom. So it really has a strong organization and looks good from all sides. As previously noted, there are a lot of warm materials taking place on this project. We have wood siding. We have wood rails at the balconies. Down below at the pedestrian level, we have a lot of Cor-Ten finished metal just to provide a warm, textured appearance for people to enjoy. There's the white plaster frames, a darker plaster up above, and some durable fiber cement paneling, as well as some accent panels here at the retail. The basic idea was to provide a natural, durable building that was warm and supported modern living. But how will this project be experienced at the street level? We have three views we'd like to just share. One is here looking into the public plaza, and then we have two views in the residential courtyard. Here at the Gateway Intersection Plaza, we worked real hard to get the project to really direct people into the retail. This is just a suggested possible occupant, a Blue Bottle Coffee or some other type of vendor could go here. But you have a direct shot to that retail from the corner, as well as places to sit and enjoy the view and whatever is inside that shop. Here you can see the glass is angled. It will provide different reflections throughout the day. And also the columns tell a story from each direction. So they look one way from this direction and another from the other. Again, the goal was really to enrich and activate the pedestrian experience. And you can see here the mural that draws you into the retail, as well as glazing right here for the community room for the residential development. So that can provide a lantern at nighttime, just communicating that there's life here in the city of Mountain View. Then a view from the courtyard. We provided a sculptural sitting element that kids could climb on, run around, play around, kind of supporting small families with small kids. Lots of benches around to sit on and enjoy the activities. The sound of water with a recirculating water pump fountain here, and nano walls that can open up this whole corner so that the residential clubhouse can open right out into the courtyard, as well as an attention to the experience of living here, with the fenced area really helping to separate the courtyard from the very busy street intersection to help it make it feel safe. Then just one last view, kind of looking back towards the sculptural sitting element with the fountain. This is really the main entry into the residential development. So it provides a respite, a comfortable place to be before you go on in. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to the landscape architect.
Okay, can you hear me, Brent? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. My name is Kevin. I'm with Environmental Foresight. We're the landscape architects. I'll be talking about the rooftop landscape and the streetscape landscape. This is a really great image. It shows a lot of both levels. The first thing I think we'll talk about is the importance of the native plant palette. Rebecca mentioned that before. We're striving for 75% native plants, and I think we've surpassed that by a little bit. I actually recently partook in the Rescape Bay Friendly training, and so I kind of was reinvigorated by the great features of native plants. Their low water use, they're very attractive, and even in an urban situation like this, they can still provide habitat for pollinators and creatures. Brent, can you go to the next slide? This is a rooftop, the landscape. We try to work with the shape of the footprint of the building, along with raised planters to create some nice nooks. We've got some nice kind of lounge sitting areas. There's kind of central on the looking over the balcony. There's a kind of a life cycle area taking advantage of the view. At the bottom right, there's a kind of a dining area with string lights and an outdoor counter that's got an electric barbecue that complies with the REACH program, so we don't have any gas appliances on the project. In the center in the middle, there's a synthetic resilient turf, resilient surface area for kids to play. It's a little bit softer and more flexible. And you can see on the right all the images, all the landscape elements and materials are very contemporary to kind of fit with the building. So next one, Brad. This is the ground level. I think Brent has some great images of how the courtyard works. And again, just to reiterate, we worked a lot with Rebecca on just kind of implementing how the precise plan works with all the streetscape elements, the bike parking, all the pedestrian zones. We worked on how the screening the utilities, the backflow preventers there on California Street. And we actually worked with Public Works through Rebecca to kind of squeeze in one extra tree on California Street, which is kind of a great thing. And again, these images on the right are to show how contemporary the landscape elements are. Next slide, Brent. And so you can see this is such a great image of the project. It's a great gateway into the city. It's replacing a fossil fuel driven enterprise. And so this is just a destination residential project where people can own homes in Mountain View. So I think we're available for questions at this point.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So we'll first have questions from the council, and then we'll go to the public for comments, and then return to council for action and deliberation. I think as a starting question, though, for staff, I know the applicant had acknowledged the letter and the request submitted in advance of the meeting. I'm hoping staff can share with us if you've had an opportunity to assess the ask, and then what the council may or may not do with this information. City Attorney.
Thank you. Good evening. This is City Attorney Jennifer Logue. The letter that was submitted by the applicant was shared with me, and I did have an opportunity to review the requests in the letter related to consideration of a larger 7-story 90-unit project. And unfortunately, the requests in the letter are not noticed properly for council's full consideration, discussion, and action this evening. So what I'm recommending is that council may acknowledge the request from the applicant and discuss and vote on whether council wishes to consider the request in full at a later meeting, and also may provide directions to the applicant and staff to return with options for the larger project, including but not limited to staff analysis and recommendations on what additional legislative action or other action would be necessary by council to make the larger project possible. So really, in order to remain compliant with the Brown Act, you should just limit discussion to whether or not you'd like to see this in the future, and then provide direction on what should come back for council's consideration.
Thank you for that explanation. Do any members of the council have additional questions? And can we take off the screen share just so I can see everyone? Thank you. Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. In the material we had, it says that in the conditions, condition 23 says that the DRC is going to provide direction on modifications to color. And I was wondering, is that already reflected in the plans that we saw, or is that further changes to the design of the project?
Council member, I'll let Rebecca Shapiro answer that question.
Thank you, Councilmember Matichak. You're referring, I think, to the portion of the condition of approval for the Perdima, the Parklex Perdima siding. Is that correct? Just as a point of clarification.
So let's see, I have to go back to that condition. I didn't remember it being specific to anything. I thought it was just it was 23.
Okay, I think I know a portion of the condition. So the condition of approval number 23 just broadly speaks to the final recommendations that come from the DRC to staff and are worked on between staff and the applicant prior to public hearings, but some of which turn into conditions of approval. So the general summary in the sort of preface paragraphs just references the topics that are addressed in the specific bullet points below. The building materials and colors is a kind of a combined condition in the first bullet A, which speaks to the Parklex Perdima specification. That's the wood siding that's being proposed. At the last DRC review, it came to light that the concept that had been proposed and shown to the DRC previously, the specific colors that were being shown actually were no longer available. And so rather than trying to solve it in that moment, since the city requires the construction of a mock-up prior to building construction, it was determined that we'd evaluate the final color of the wood siding through that mock-up after the project gets past council.
Oh no, is Councilmember Matichak frozen? We will come back. Are there any other members of the council who have questions? Councilmember Kameh.
Great, thank you. In the council questions that came back, staff was able to share the price of the market rate units, which I believe the 1 bedroom will be $1,078,000, and then the 2 would be 1.318. And I believe, and apologies, I had asked staff for the price point for the BMR units, which I thought was helpful, especially in evaluating between option 1 and option 2. And perhaps staff can share that response. I just thought it was helpful in that evaluation point, and just would ask them to share those numbers as well. Or if the applicant has those numbers too, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, if it's useful, I put a table up. This is information provided by our housing staff on the currently estimated sales price for the below market rate units under either BMR option. The asterisk is worth noting that these are subject to change based on income levels and assumptions for the HOA fees, mortgage rates, and utilities, and the final estimates will be made during the building permit stage based on pertinent data at that time.
Yeah. Great, thank you. 1 bedroom, Perfect. Awesome. And I'm able to capture that. Thank you, staff, for sharing that. And then, one of the items of feedback that I asked as well, and would just ask Ms. Cameron to respond was, we have the LASD school that hopefully, fingers crossed, will be coming in with our new city park, and so circulation and bicycle pedestrian safety has been top of mind. And I always forget the technical term, but for the bike lane on California, I know it's going to have a little bit of like a split lane between the right turn lane onto, I believe, San Antonio. And perhaps we can just talk about the flow there. I was comfortable with the answer, but I know that that's something that has come up quite a bit. And so I thought I would just put that forward now. I don't know if, so perfect.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I am Renee Gunn. I'm a senior civil engineer in the Public Works Department, supporting CDD on this project. And I missed the very end of the question as I was being promoted, but I will talk about the bike lanes and then we'll make sure we get everything covered. So yes, this is on the way to school for kids that would be coming from that part of town. And just like we do on a lot of projects, including California Street on the westbound right now, when we have those right turn lanes, we stripe it such the right turn lane ends up next to the curb. So you have a right turn lane, then you have the bike lane, then you have the through lane. So in those areas where the bikes and the right turners kind of swap locations, we do the green stripe on there to make it very clear that it's a point of conflict between the vehicles and the bicyclist. And that's what's proposed on this project also.
Great, thank you. And I think that should council be interested in other options, is that something we would just discuss, as a CIP, or what of other, I just know it's like, it's been a topic of discussion in the community recently. So I know that in other jurisdictions, they've been looking at doing, separated bike lanes. I know that's something that we've talked about a little bit, like on El Camino. Where would we be able to have more of a discussion point on that, if should it arise?
Good evening, Councilmember Kamei, Dawn Cameron, Public Works Director. Should there be a desire to continue to look at the bike treatments on California and at this intersection, a good place for that to start to arise as part of the active transportation plan that's currently just getting started. And that could then lead the way to identifying priorities, which will lead to future capital improvement program projects to make these types of improvements.
Great, thank you. I think that's really helpful. We've just been receiving so much feedback that it's useful to know kind of which avenues to go through. So really, really appreciate staff answering both of those questions. Thanks so much, Mayor. That's it from me.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Lieber and then return to Councilmember Matichak for the remainder of her questions. Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if I missed it in the staff report, the dollar level of low income and the moderate income. I have the estimated sales price for the BMR units. But what would that work out to in terms of the income restriction?
So I believe in the audience should be Michaela Hellman-Tincher, and she's probably the best source of information on income levels associated with the low income or moderate income units in the project, depending on which option council selects.
Councilmember Lieber will need a little bit of time, so I will, if you want to continue, Mayor, I will confer and we'll get the information for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Councilmember Matichak, why don't we complete your questions and then return to Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why my computer decided to reboot in the middle of everything, considering I rebooted right before the meeting to make sure it wouldn't do that, as well as everything else in the house here. Frustrating. Anyway, I think the answer to my original question was it is the color of some of the siding that is being discussed. I had another question in attachment 4 on page 14, and it was actually one of the slides that was also shown by the applicant. There is a section along San Antonio Road, and I was trying to figure out what the alternating light green and dark green colors were. I'm not sure if they want to bring that up, but I was trying to figure out, is that planting or is that all like hard surfaces?
Along the street, it's alternating hard surfaces and planting. I think you can see in this, actually, is there an image shared?
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up again.
Okay, I think it'll be pretty clear. Along the street, it does alternate with paving, with bike racks and planting.
So I did see the bike racks, but toward the El Camino end of the project, for lack of a better way of describing it, it looked like there was alternating light green and dark green patches. Attachment 4, it was.
Is this what you're talking about, or are you talking about here?
There on the ground.
Yeah, those are different landscape planting areas. There's different types of plants in each of the areas.
I think those different kind of greens were differentiating different planting types. Very rudimentary, yeah.
I was concerned that it was hardscape, but it's actually plantings. Okay.
Yes.
And then materials just aren't shown in the rendering to provide a clearer view to the building behind the landscaping.
Yep, thanks. And then the community room, when you showed that earlier, I guess it didn't hit me until just now that it's solid. And so actually it's not something that somebody on the street can look into. So it doesn't activate the street, so to speak. It's, is that true?
Well, the idea behind that was it's kind of a dance between providing privacy to the residents and also activating the street. So the balance that we sought was to activate it through a lively facade treatment that draws you into the retail, and then to have one window that has translucent glass at the lower level, but clear glass at the top, so that you do get a sense of activity inside the building at the street level.
Okay, so the top of those windows is clear.
Yes.
Okay. And then this is a good picture for my next question. Are those all pavers? And what color is that really? It looks kind of like a light yellow or a dark beige, or what is that color?
Yeah, these are meant to be beige pavers. Sorry, every computer screen probably shows things differently. With gray, like a medium gray paver for the patterns. So,
okay.
Yeah, those are all pavers.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And then RT, did you have a response for Councilmember Lieber's question? And then we'll go to Councilmember Showalter.
Yes, I do. So just to give you a range for the 80%, which is low income units, which are 80% of average median income, the maximum income for a family of 4 is $105,400. Sorry, family of 2. And for a family of 4, it is $131,750. And for the moderate, which runs 120% of average median income, the maximum income for a family of 2 is $161,750, and that's annual. And for a family of 4, $202,200.
Thank you. Councilmember Showalter.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions too that harken back to the questions we asked staff earlier before the meeting. And one is how does the Mountain View Transportation Management Association membership work for an apartment building like this, or for a condominium building like this? Sorry, and what do the sort of the residents get for it?
Council member, I believe Don Cameron is here and maybe can speak to this issue.
Thank you very much. So the Mountain View Transportation Management Association over the last couple of years has been working to really provide more services that are geared towards residential projects. So there are a few benefits that all members receive. If they happen to be along one of the shuttle routes, of course, they have access to the free shuttle services provided by the Mountain View Transportation Association called MVGO. They've recently expanded their shuttle routes. They had planned to do this before COVID. It all got, had to be pulled back for a while, but now they're out and doing this again. And one of the key new shuttle routes they added, by the way, was adding a shuttle route along San Antonio Road. So they expanded a route that now functions as a bi-directional loop that includes San Antonio Road, goes up into North Bay Shore, comes back into the Mountain View Transit Center, and loops back around again and gets back to San Antonio Road. So both residential and commercial businesses that belong to the TMA have access to these shuttle routes and may use them. In addition, the TMA is working to offer and has been offering other services such as midday mobility options, guaranteed ride homes if they are Caltrain users, and they're between times. So they have these different programs they've been putting out there for all their members. On the residential side, I can tell you what they've been studying and planning to do is make available TDM services for residential projects, in particular, supplementing either the TDM program that's provided on site, or for some of these residential projects where they're not going to have a TDM coordinator on site, they would provide the TDM coordinator. And this is a program they're still working up and getting developed, and that's part of their goals here. And so it could be including when you get new residents, they get a care package that says, here's all your options. What are the kind of other types of services they can provide to really promote not using their cars and using other alternatives to get around?
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I think is probably an RT question or a Rebecca question. And that is, I wanted to understand a little bit better about one of the exemptions. Normally we require more open space per unit than is designed into this project. So can you explain the difference, please? And also why that exemption is something we probably need to approve.
Sorry, Council Member, I believe Rebecca has that information.
Great.
Thank you, Councilmember Showalter, for that question. The very short answer is this is a density bonus project. It's a 50% density bonus, so there's just more building on the same amount of land. So one of the things that the state density bonus law says is that as needed, a developer can propose and request waivers or reductions of development standards, which if they brought the project into full compliance would physically preclude a developer from constructing the density bonus area. So in this case, the additional building area just limits the amount of open space that the project can provide. Additionally, the city has pretty aggressive sustainability measures that we require of new development, one of which is rooftop solar. So the proposed roof deck in this project is pretty much the sort of maximal size it can be, while also satisfying the city's REACH code objectives for solar installations. So the long and the short of it is the project is providing as much open space as it can, and state density bonus law requires the city to approve waivers such as this, which, if not granted, would physically preclude construction of the project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Hicks.
Well, one of the things I was impressed to read about this proposal is that that by removing the gas stations actually generate a lot of traffic in the area, which I know is a concern in this area, and that by removing gas station and adding multiple stories of housing, it would actually reduce traffic in the area, whereas I would have probably guessed that it would have increased it. So I didn't think you highlighted that much in your presentation. Maybe I just missed it, but I'm wondering if you can give me a little more detail on that, and also for members of the public who maybe are here but didn't read the full, didn't have the meeting that I had with you all on site.
So I'm not sure if that is being directed to city staff. If so, I think the best source of information for more detailed data on the trip generation for this project as compared to the existing gas station would be our CEQA consultants. We have Leslie Trejo in the audience, and Dan Rubens and Jasper Lee from Fair and Peers. But the summary, Council Vice Mayor Hicks, that you just provided is at a high level exactly the situation at hand. The analysis showed that the existing gas station, even discounting sort of trips of convenience, would generate more traffic than this project would.
Okay, I don't know if there's any more relevant detail, but I did want to ask that so that members of the public would be certain to know that. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the council? And I see Dan has been promoted. I don't know if you wanted to provide any additional detail, or Vice Mayor, if staff's response was sufficient for now.
Well, if you have relevant detail, sure. But if you think that pretty much covers it, I mean, to me, it's interesting in general as we develop and as we move more towards electrified cars, and probably do reduce the number of gas stations that we need, yet we still need more housing. So if there's more detail, I'd love to hear it, but if that summary you think covers everything we need to know, then that's fine as well.
Hi all, Leslie. I will actually let Dan answer this since Fair and Peers conducted the transportation analysis for this project.
Hi, this is Danny Rubens with Fair and Peers. The high-level summary is correct that a residential project of this size would generate fewer vehicle trips during the peak hours and during the day across the 24-hour period than a gas station of this size. You can think of it in 10, 20, 30, 40 vehicles fewer during the peak hours, just to give you a sense of order of magnitude, and several hundred during the day, about 400 vehicles during the day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other members of the council in the queue, we will turn to the public. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. And let's go ahead and allocate 2 minutes. The first speaker is Tim Mather.
Good evening. I have one comment and 3 questions that I would like to, I'll take the answers to the questions offline from the staff, please. First comment would be is that I would be definitely against a 7-story building. 5 stories, okay, but 7 stories, no. As I've expressed to the council before, the density within the San Antonio PIR is already too high. So 7, no, 5, yes. Three questions that I would be interested in getting answers to from the staff offline. Number one is, what environmental requirements for cleanup from the underground gasoline storage will be enforced? Number two is, will publicly available EV charging stations be available? Since we're replacing a gas station, what about an EV charging station for the public? And number three, is the single-story strip mall behind the current property on California Street included in this development? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Cheryl.
Hi, I live about 4 blocks away, and my building is mostly seniors and disabled folks. And I'm curious about walking. When you talked about sidewalks, you just made them sound very decorative, and that doesn't sound very useful. And people from here are taking wheelchairs to Safeway and Walmart and those places, and a lot of people walking. And so I'm concerned about the size of the sidewalks, the useful of the sidewalks. Are your businesses going to actually be facing the sidewalks or interior some parking lot? So those are my questions, really. Those are my statements as well.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. The next speaker is Daniel.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So I just want to, call in and express my support for the project. I live on the same block. I think it's really a good opportunity to further build out the San Antonio area. I also appreciate, as a cyclist, that we're going to be replacing like 3 driveways going into bike lanes with 1. And I appreciate that there are going to be fewer cars going in and out of that lot. There might be a nice shop in there. That would be cool. Overall, in terms of preference, I'd say why not build 7 stories if it's possible to make all the amendments. All the other buildings around that area are pretty tall anyway. It's not clear what exactly would be saved by doing 5 instead of 7. So just want to support the project and hope that it gets approved.
Very much. Next speaker is Alex.
Hey, friends. I also, like the first speaker, I don't think 7 stories is great. Personally, I would go much taller. I think this area could support greater density, and the taller you build, the more efficient the land use, and also the more you can do with things like sidewalks, driveways. You're able to get more out of a project by allowing it to be bigger, and you can house more people. And we need that. We need housing. So, yeah, 7, not ideal. Go for 10 or 50. 100? 200? I got a minute and 20 left. I could just keep naming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other members of the public wishing to speak, we will return to the council for deliberation and action. I will make a suggestion that we first consider the project as proposed, and then if the council would like to provide additional direction, that we do so with a separate motion. And if there is a motion to approve the recommendation, it should also include reading the title of the resolutions attached to the report. Any member of the council like to begin? Vice Mayor Hicks.
Well, I'll just start off by saying I strongly support the project. I like that it's condo ownership. That's something we don't get a lot of, and so it's more affordable home ownership. I also think that the design is good for a number of pretty objective reasons. I like that one of the members of the public asked about this, but I like that the kind of carved out arcades allow for wider sidewalks, which I agree with the member of the public who says we need wider sidewalks, you know, as this area gets more dense, and particularly for people in wheelchairs. That's a good thing to have. It makes the area more pleasant to walk in and just increases walkability. You know, there will be more people on the streets. I also like the plaza. It's a good gateway as you enter the San Antonio area. And I like the fact that it looks good on all sides. There's no kind of turning its back to you wherever you are. You know, there's some attention to detail. And I, like I said, I love the fact that replacing the gas station reduces traffic rather than increases it as we build a larger building. I also love that Councilmember Matichak mentioned activating the streets, because I think that's a super important concept. But I do support the way the developer did it. I think that looking into or proposes to do it, looking into a community room that you're not allowed into is not a particularly welcoming site. I think that adding the muraling or the design interest on the outside, and it's not a long stretch. I actually think that's a good approach. And then of course the shop on the street that I would be invited into also activates the street. So overall, I think there are a lot of very good things for the area, and I strongly support the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kamei.
Thanks, Mayor. So since I know there's going to be kind of different components, I thought I'd just go forward and propose a motion and see if I might get a second, just to keep things moving, because I know there's going to be greater discussion. And so not necessarily feeling compelled to give too many comments, other than, you know, we as a city and city staff spent years and years, and the community who's on the line remembers, for the San Antonio Precise Plan. And so I think that the design elements that are incorporated are a reflection of the diligence and the hard work of all of us, and the collective input for the project. So I think that's kind of the overarching comment I'll make. And then for me, I think that the biggest component was trying to grapple with the number of BMR units. For me, I'm really kind of more compelled towards more units, excuse me, versus kind of the AMI percentage mix. I think one of the things we've been addressing as a council has been, how do we get just more BMR units that are greatly needed in Mountain View? So for me, I'm compelled to move forward the staff recommendation with the original project BMR option, which would be the 13 units. Open to the discussion, but really feeling that 3 additional units make a lot of sense, considering what we've been seeing recently. So I'll put that motion forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Kamei. Because we do have to read the resolutions, would you like to do that now, or did you want to have the discussion first?
Happy to read the resolution, but I'd love to see if I get a second before I read everything.
Well, let's go to Councilmember Showalter.
I second it. Go ahead and read.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let me pull it up. Just one moment. Okay. Let's see. I move that we adopt an initial study of the environmental significance for 334 San Antonio Road mixed-use project and determine that the project is consistent with the San Antonio Precise Plan Final Environmental Impact Report and the Mountain View 2030 General Plan and Greenhouse Gas Reduction Program Final Environmental Impact Report pursuant to sections 15162 and 15183 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. 2, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View approving a planned community permit and development review permit for a new 5-story mixed-use development with 62 residential units and 2,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space above 2 levels of underground parking, including a 50% state density bonus request with development waivers and concessions and a provisional use permit to allow rooftop amenities above the 3rd floor at 334 San Antonio Road to be read in title only, further reading waived, and identify the council approved below market rate option with associated state density bonus concessions request of the 2 applicant proposed options. Staff and Environmental Planning Commission recommended, should I say option 1 then as part of the resolution?
Council member, yes.
Okay, option 1. Yeah. Recommended below market rate option 1 as discussed in this report. 3, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View approving a vesting tentative map for condominium purposes for 62 residential units and 1 commercial unit at 334 San Antonio Road to be read in title only, further reading waived.
Thank you. So we have Councilmember Kamei's motion for the staff recommendation with BMR option 1, seconded by Councilmember Showalter. Councilmember Showalter?
Yes, I just wanted to say that in addition to the good reasons that Vice Mayor Hicks mentioned, I also I'm really delighted to see a condo. I think that we have very few options for stacked flats and condos, and we've been looking for them. So, you know, this is a great opportunity. But another thing I think that will be very pleasant for the people that live in this building is the access to the rooftop. People from the rooftop and also from the 5th floor will be able to see the bay. And particularly with the restoration efforts that are ongoing, that's going to be just a beautiful view. So that's another thing about this project that I think is a wonderful amenity.
Thank you. Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. So I also appreciate that this is condos. We often hear that they're not feasible, and yet here's a proposal for one. So it's interesting to see that. I will say, though, I'm frustrated with the state density bonus law. I find it troubling that there can be so many concessions and waivers and basically override what we have done to get what we want in Mountain View. And in this case, it's frustrating that it even overrides our own BMR ordinance, because I think a lot of thought went into that. And yet you can deviate from our own BMR ordinance according to the state density bonus law. Makes it very hard to say no to a project like this because of that state density bonus law. And I would probably prefer to see something different than what we have here, but that's really not an option. I do prefer, though, the original BMR proposal, and I apologize if I missed the discussion on that while my computer was rebooting, but I prefer a larger number of units. And I think it's more challenging to find qualified buyers for larger units, like 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. I did watch the EPC meeting on this project, and it was, I've heard this before from others, that it is often challenging to find folks who qualify to buy those larger units. But, you know, to have a few more units and potentially more buyers for the 1-bedroom units, I think is important. And let's see, I am disappointed in the tree canopy coverage, very disappointed in it. And so I would like to see if there is a way to not just increase tree canopy coverage by having larger trees with larger canopies, but if there was an opportunity for even more trees. And I know staff was going to look at the canopy, but if the maker of the motion would be open to it, to say, and also look to see if there's the opportunity to add more trees, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Very much. Any additional?
Sorry, that was a question for the maker of the motion, if they would. Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see that. I guess, Pat.
Yes, it's okay with me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we might, so that was simply a request for the applicant to consider adding additional trees. It wasn't a requirement, right? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, in the conditions, it talked about staff was going to work with the applicant to increase the tree canopy coverage, but the way they were going to do that is look for larger trees. I would say in addition to that, if you could just look at adding more trees.
Okay, got it. So adding to the existing condition.
Correct.
Thank you. And then RT, you had your hand up. Did you want to speak to this, or?
I wanted to clarify the motion in particular to say we will do our best, but you know, the physical limitations will dictate what we can do.
Understood. Thank you. Unfortunately, I do not believe I can allow the applicant additional time unless there are specific questions. And correct me if I'm wrong, City Attorney.
No, I think it's fine for the applicant to, if you would like to hear from the applicant, that's fine.
Okay, so we'll go to the applicant and then back to council.
Yes, I would like to add something into the discussion, and sorry for interrupting the council deliberating here, but so of course, Rebecca can give a little bit of background of option A and option B. That both of them were presented literally a day or two before the EPC, and it was determined that both options are compliant, fully compliant. The applicant basically presented both just to be able to have a debate with EPC, but since both of them are compliant after that meeting, we kept to show into the city council as part of this presentation, but applicant, as expressed in the letter that was sent to the city too, would like the council to consider the review of a 5-story building tonight with option 2, because option 2 is compliant. And that's basically what I wanted to add, what applicant wants to put in front of the council. But since it was a discussion with EPC, we wanted to make it sure that council also sees the entire discussion with EPC, which they voted 5-2 in favor of option 2, which we presented in the last minute. So I just want to kind of clarify that as part of the discussion, that that's what the intention of the applicant, and that's what the applicant would like to see, but fully transparency would like the council to see both options, because we started with option 1 a year ago. So just want to make sure that it's taken in consideration what applicant would like to council to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for staff based on that remark. I know there are limitations on what we can impose on code compliant projects. So because both represent, we have full latitude to choose from between them. Sorry, you can't hear me at all. Is that any better? Better? Okay, sorry about that. Based on that last remark, my question to the city attorney is, to what extent do we have the latitude to condition that it sounds like the applicant does support? Because I know sometimes there are restrictions on what we can impose on a code compliant project.
I'm sorry. Unfortunately, you were breaking up for me a lot. I don't know if other people were experiencing that. I just want to, but before we move on, I want to make sure I'm clear on what we're talking about. Option 1 and option 2. Are those the BMR options that I saw put up? Okay, so those are the 2 options that we're talking about. And it's my understanding that the EPC voted for option 2, and that's what the applicant is wanting to bring forward for council's council's approval. But the motion right now is for option 1. Is that correct? Okay. I don't know if, before I answer, did council member Kamei want to weigh in, since she's the maker of the motion, in light of what the applicant just said? Did you want to go first before I addressed any questions?
I would just like a point of order. You know, I feel like this is a council deliberation, and would appreciate the opportunity to discuss it as a council versus the preference of an applicant or not an applicant. Staff put forward the 2 options. I feel like council was given these 2 options. We also have something else that we need to discuss as well, which I think has various options. I would appreciate the clarification that we're now into council deliberation, and that the questions are over, and perhaps we can move into that versus continued input from the applicant whose presentation time has been exceeded.
Thank you. So my apologies for delaying the deliberation. Can you hear me better now? Does this sound any better? I'm so sorry. So I'm happy to support the motion. I think that the question is, the options were presented as equivalent to the council, so we can select freely from between them. But I know that there are limitations in what a council can impose on an applicant who's putting forward a code compliant project. And so the question is, if the applicant says, actually, I don't like option 1, or I refuse to pursue a project with option 1, can we impose a condition with option 1, knowing that the applicant appears to no longer support option
1? Wow, that's a I'm going to need a minute to consult with one of the attorneys in my office on that question. I was not anticipating that question. If you can hold for a second, I'm going to have to consult on that question.
Maybe we should take a 3-minute recess and come back at 8:25 to allow staff the time to confer. Is that okay? Okay, we'll resume at 8:25 p.m. City Attorney.
Thank you. Thank you for that brief break. So I did have an opportunity to consult with another attorney in my office. And yes, for clarification, if what the applicant is doing at this point is withdrawing from council's consideration option 2 or option 1, I'm sorry, and they are only putting forward option 2 as a concession, then council is bound to accept the project with that option that they are putting forward. It is unfortunate that this was not made clear in their presentation. And I apologize, I was not clear on this issue, but yes, you are bound by what they're proposing if they are withdrawing that option.
Thank you for the clarification. And I don't think any of us anticipated this. I don't think the applicant had made it clear that option 1 was withdrawn. That's unfortunate. Yes, City Attorney, does this mean that we cannot vote on the motion on the floor?
That's correct. If that is, I don't know if they want to provide clarification that they are in fact withdrawing that from council's consideration. And if that is the case, then yes, there needs to be a new motion based on the availability of option 2 only.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought that we were hearing from the applicant that they greatly preferred option 2, but not that they were officially withdrawing option 1. But maybe if it's possible to hear from them briefly what their intention with their comments was.
Staff, bring the applicant back then for clarification. And Mircea, I think we're seeking a clarification from you on BMR option 1 versus BMR option 2.
Yes, so to make it short, BMR option 2, it's what the applicant seeks, and BMR option 1, it's what the applicants would like to withdraw.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Then we will need, unfortunately, a new motion. Are there any additional questions or comments or a new motion? Councilmember Showalter.
Well, I can't say I really appreciate this behavior on the part of the developer, but at the same time, I do think this is a good project. And so I would like to move forward with the motion to support the project, including option 2. Do I need to read the entire, since that was already read, do I need to read that into the record again?
Yes, let's just, to make it clear and clean, if you could read it back into the record with inserting the new option into the reading.
Okay.
And also the addition from Councilmember Matichak related to trees. I think that will also need to be included in the new motion.
Okay. I move that we adopt the initial study of environmental significance for the 334 San Antonio Road mixed-use project and determine that the project is consistent with the San Antonio Precise Plan Final Environmental Impact Report and Mountain View 2030 General Plan and Greenhouse Gas Reduction Program Final Environmental Impact Report pursuant to sections 15162 and 15183 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. 2, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View approving a planned community permit and development review permit for a new 5-story mixed-use development with 62 residential units and 2,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space above 2 levels of underground parking, including a 50% state density bonus request with development waivers and concessions and a provisional use permit to allow rooftop amenities above the 3rd floor at 334 San Antonio Road to be read in title only, further reading waived, and identify the council approved below market rate option with associated state density bonus concession request of the one applicant proposed option. Staff and the Environmental Planning Commission recommend below market rate option 2 as discussed in this report. And 3, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View approving a vesting tentative map for condominium purposes for 62 residential units and 1 commercial unit at 334 San Antonio Road to be read in title only, further reading waived. And a 4th would be consider the addition of more trees as possible.
Thank you. Is there a second, Vice Mayor Hicks?
Yes, a second.
Thank you. Any remaining questions or comments? Councilmember Kamei.
Yeah, I just had a clarifying question for staff. So this is the project that we're now, it's compliant.
Councilmember Kamei, yes, per state density bonus law, the project does qualify for concessions, which would be applied in the case of option 2, and so it would be considered compliant.
Okay. So I'd just like to share some of the that I'll vote for the project. It is compliant, and I think I share some of the frustrations that Councilmember Matichak mentioned in terms of remaining having some say in the project. I'd also like to say, very appreciative of staff and their hard work on this, but also would like to say to the applicant, this is not how we do things in Mountain View. We do not change things in real time during the meeting when it's in deliberation. And I find it really unacceptable to be put in a situation where we're given 2 options and then be told that those 2 options no longer exist, especially when we have a letter requesting us to do even further considerations. I don't think that that is something that happens in our city. We have great relationships with our developer community and our city staff and our council. And I just would like to say that that is something that those are 3 additional units for below market rate units that families need in Mountain View. And we've now been told we can no longer provide that. And I find that extremely disappointing and upsetting. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Matichak.
Yeah, I will reluctantly support this because it is compliant. But I 100% agree with the comments that Councilmember Kamei just made. Every single one of them. This is incredibly disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any remaining questions or comments? And just echoing my colleagues, don't put forward multiple options if you don't mean it. And if there are no additional comments or questions, then I'll ask the city clerk to start the roll call.
Councilmember Showalter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hicks?
Yes, but I also support the comments Councilmember Kamei made.
Councilmember Kamei?
Yes.
Councilmember Liebert?
Aye.
Councilmember Matichek?
Yes.
Mayor Ramirez?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. So I'll leave a little bit of space if there was any additional council interest in providing direction to staff beyond what we've already given. Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. So are you talking about in response to the letter?
Yes.
So the direction I would give to the applicant and staff is if the applicant has a different project that they want us to consider, they can file a new application. They can go through the gatekeeper process because there are lots of other property owners who would like to have their parcels rezoned. I don't see any reason to prioritize this one over anything else, but an applicant always has the option of filing a new application and going through that process, including this one. Thank you.
Thank you. I am not seeing any other hands up. So if there are no additional questions or comments, then that concludes item 6.1. Thank you, staff, for your work on this project. So now we will proceed to 7.1, compensation for council appointees. And Vice Mayor Allison Hicks will present the item.
Thank you, Mayor. So every year, the City Council reviews the performance and compensation of council appointees. The council appointees include the city attorney, the city clerk, and the city manager. As the Vice Mayor, I oversaw this process, and the council was assisted by professional facilitator Nelson Fallow from Rene Public Management Group. The City Council has completed the evaluations, and the purpose of this item is to consider adjustments to compensation. The Brown Act requires the City Council to orally report a summary of council action on the salaries, salary schedule, or fringe benefits of council appointees during an open meeting of which the final action is to be taken. To satisfy this requirement, I'm providing this report of the recommended adjustment for city clerk and city manager. A merit increase of 3% is being recommended for the city clerk and 4% for the city manager. A merit increase was not considered at this time for the city attorney because her employment with the city just started in April of 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any member of the council have questions? If not, then we will turn to the public. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. A timer will be displayed on the screen. Seeing no members of the public wishing to speak, we will return to the council for deliberation and action. And I will note that a motion to approve the recommendation should also include reading the title of the resolution attached to the report. Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. I move that we adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View approving annual compensation increases for the city clerk and city manager and adopt a revised salary plan to be read in title only, further reading waived.
Thank you. Councilmember Kamei.
I'll second.
Thank you. Councilmember Showalter.
I'd just like to say that we had a very great discussion, good discussion with the city managers and the city attorney and the city clerk, and we really appreciate the service that they give to the city of Mountain View. And we had a very good discussion about things that were going really well and things that weren't going really well, that needed improvement. And I felt that this was an excellent process. So I want to thank Vice Mayor Hicks for leading it up. But I just want to make sure that more than that, we really thank our council appointees, the city manager, the city attorney, and the city clerk for their service. They're doing a great job, and it's much appreciated.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hicks.
Yes, I wanted to agree with Councilmember Showalter that overall the review was that everybody was doing a great job. I also wanted to give thanks. I also wanted to say it was a pleasure to conduct this and give thanks to Councilmember Kamei for suggesting that we hire a consultant. I think she's right. We're at the size, the city's at the size and amount of complexity that that it was really helpful to have a consultant, and think we should do so in the future. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, and completely agree. If there are no additional questions or comments, then as this item pertains in part to our city clerk, our assistant city clerk, Mary Mundlux, will now take the roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Matichak?
Yes.
Councilmember Kamei?
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber?
Yes.
Councilmember Showalter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hicks?
Yes.
And Mayor Ramirez?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And now we will proceed to item 8, council staff and committee reports. And I did promise that I would give the city manager an opportunity to update us about, I believe, the termination of the emergency declaration.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. So I just want to give everyone a heads up, if they have not already heard, that the governor has declared that he will be ending the pandemic state of emergency as of February 28th, 2023. So what that means for us in the city, we've had our own local state of emergency that has been continuing since March of 2020. We've basically been following the county and the state since they have still been in a state of emergency. So the city will also be ending our local state of emergency once the statewide state of emergency ends as of February 28th. So I just wanted to make sure that the public is aware of that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other council reports? Councilmember Matichak.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I participated as a member of the Santa Clara County Airport Land Use Commission on a meeting we had last week, and we are still working on the updated comprehensive land use plan for San Jose Airport, given that the airport changed their master plan. It's a long process. And also I participated in the Moffett Field Restoration Advisory Board meeting as the board member representing Mountain View a couple of weeks ago. This group now meets just once a year, and we typically get updates on how the contamination that still exists at Moffett Field is being addressed and how cleaned up it is or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lieber.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 items. I was very pleased to sit in on the Moffett RAB along with Councilmember Matichak as our official representative. And we heard, as I know that the council member is aware of, a great deal of information about TCE concentrations in the ground and water table around Moffett. And also there was a great deal of discussion about PFAs. And these are the forever chemicals that at very small amounts are implicated in a number of cancers. And one of the issues that was talked about in the emerging information regarding that is the possibility of federal money for cleanup of these forever chemicals at Moffett, and a need to find out if our wastewater treatment plant at Palo Alto is removing the PFAS from the water that's discharged to the bay, and whether that will have an impact on the bay. So something that I think we can continue to track. The other issue that I wanted to raise was that back in the 2018, 2019 timeframe, Council last grappled with the soft story ordinance. And this is something that came to mind recently as we had the proposal coming up on East El Camino Real. And I know that this was removed from our council work plan back in 2021 because we had budgeted about $252,000 for the work for a consultant, and it was coming in with just 2 vendors that were possible to really take a look at the impact of our soft story seismic exposure. And my thinking has been, if we are to have any kind of a budget surplus this year, and I know that we will, that we should look at going back and getting that technical analysis done, even if the issue is still up in the air about how to follow up on it. And setting aside the unwanted seismic activity that we confronted today, there's recently been the identification of a previously unknown fault line near Foothill Expressway. And really looking at the numbers of residences in Mountain View, that in particular the multifamily housing stock that is potentially impacted by this. We know that if we did have even a moderate earthquake, or God forbid a severe earthquake, that we would really have a difficult time coping with the impact of our soft story seismic exposure. So I'd like to ask that Council, perhaps consider now taking a straw poll on beginning to explore this issue again, and at least moving towards getting a competent full report from professional analyst done about our exposure in terms of this issue. To me, it's one of those ones that later on, if we do have an earthquake, everyone will be asking, why didn't someone do something about this? And the fact is really that the city is the entity of government that can do something about it, and that is situated to take some responsibility for protection of our community and our constituents. And so I'd like to ask that we move forward towards getting this analysis done.
Thank you. I think before we consider a straw motion, we might need to seek some guidance from staff. City Manager, can you respond to workload implications and work that might already be in the work plan, things of that?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Lieber. So I don't have any analysis yet on the implications or the trade-offs, but I would suggest that if Council, it sounds like you all might be doing a straw poll. So I would suggest that you then put this on the work plan to consider at that time when you talk about it in February.
Okay, thank you. So then in February, this is one item that we would consider for prioritization. Okay, thank you.
And
any other?
If I might add, Mayor, through the mayor, if I may, when this was last looked at, there were only 2 consultants that were had expertise in this area and responded. One was greatly preferred by staff over the other. And so it might be a smaller amount of work than we would think to be able to get this information back to us.
Mayor and Councilmember Lieber, if I may, the staff that did work on this in the past are the same staff that are working on the housing element right now. And some of the other very large projects that you all are going to be hearing in the next few months. But certainly we'll have to look at the RFP and what was done and the timing, whether we can go forward with the same one or likely legally might have to rebid that. But that would certainly be part of what staff would do if you're interested in it. That's absolutely something that staff would look at.
10 minutes, maybe 15.
I think it'd be done in 50.
There we go. Thank you. So staff will do some additional analysis, and then when that comes back and as part of priority setting, we'll have a better sense of resource impacts and prioritization. Thank you. Councilmember Showalter.
Yeah, 2 things. Related to the BCDC meeting that I attended last Thursday. One is the good news that BCDC has gotten a couple of grants to help work on the Bay Adapt program, which is basically the program related to regional planning for sea level rise protections. And as everybody knows, we are, Mountain View is moving forward on that very well, and that's great, but the whole region needs to be, and we all need to be working together. So that's good news. There's about $5 million in total in these grants for the next 3 years. That's going to help a lot. And then the other thing I wanted to do was just invite everyone to the next BCDC meeting if they're interested. It's going to be a workshop on the strategic plan for BCDC, and that will have a great deal to do with sea level rise protections and other climate change adaptations. It's going to be November 3rd. And if anyone has an interest at all, please let me know, and I will get you all the information for the Zoom link and that sort of thing. It's going to be completely virtual. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or reports? If not, then we will proceed to item 9, closed session report. City Attorney Logue, do you have a closed session report?
Good evening. This is City Attorney Jennifer Logue. No, there is no closed session report out this evening.
Thank you. Now we will proceed to item 10, adjournment. Thank you so much for joining us. The next City Council meeting will be held on November 1st, 2022. Until then, stay healthy, and the meeting is adjourned at 8:55 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and good night.